Hetepu, Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Haru Nefer. This is Kasakma Keparu with another broadcast for you. And in this broadcast, I'm going to talk about a very interesting subject, which is how to destroy a race, a step-by-step guide. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video located below. And if this is your first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live and when I upload recorded videos. And make sure that you're getting these notifications because YouTube is a little bit funky. They play games like they don't tell you or tally up how many people subscribe to your channel, or they'll unsubscribe people for your channel. This happens kind of consistently. And the next thing is, if you are interested in knowing more about the spiritual teachings, I do have free ebooks that you can download and start reading today. The links are at the bottom, and you get a eclectic mix of different types of ebooks that I've written. So it covers a large variety of spiritual topics. So start reading those today to become more learned of a person. And finally, if you're not already a supporter of ours on Patreon, please consider doing so. You can do so for as little as $1, $5, or $20 per month, different levels. You get exclusive access to articles, videos, instructional videos on how to invoke spirits, how to use the oracles, how to become a diviner, how to communicate with interdimensional beings, how to astral project, all that good stuff. So take advantage of that. The link is below. And if you get an opportunity, please, or if you're inclined to, please consider supporting us by making a donation. So that money goes directly to helping me write more ebooks, do research, helps me to put food on the table for my 24 kids. You know, we have a big family. So your donations are greatly appreciated. So, Hatepu Arunafar, everybody, how are you doing, Magi's? So let's get into this subject matter, which is very, very interesting. And the catalyst for this topic came from a Facebook post I saw somebody had written. And directly following that, I saw supporting material, other articles and information that came out. And it really unnerved me. It started to bother me. I mean, I've always known about the ruling elite's plan, which is basically they're interested in depopulating the planet, so-called making it a one world government with one form of currency and all that good stuff. If you want to know more about that, read August Huxley's A Brave New World or George Orwell's book 1984. It'll give you some more insight on that. But what we have to think about and look at was the ancient Chinese proverb or a Klingon proverb that says, may you live in interesting times. And we certainly do live in interesting times. And we thought that it would become very crystal clear as to who our enemies were, what we were fighting against. But lo and behold, it turns out that our enemies are more clever than we thought they were. And I warned many in the conspiracy theory arena, the New Age movement, to be very careful because they don't understand the level of evil they're dealing with and the level of cleverness they're dealing with. And what you see now is happening is that it's a little more, well, I should say a lot more complex to really put your finger on the problem and put your finger on the culprits. One of the things that we practiced very early on when I got into spiritual cultures was a technique called scanning the timeline. And basically what that means is that you would transfer your consciousness into the very future, and not just one future, but a number of possible future outcomes. And therefore, when you return to this space-time continuum, you could advise others on what would happen in the near future. And I did this for, let's just say, um, white people and black people, males and females. I went ahead forward in time. I scanned the different timelines, came back, and saw where we were headed. Now, there is no one future that's written in stone that we're headed towards. You see, what we can tell you for certain is where the energy is leaning to at this particular moment, that there's a greater possibility of this future outcome happening. But we cannot say for certain because people's vibration changes, situations changes, and in doing so, you hop skip from one space-time continuum or timeline to another timeline. But one thing is certain, and I think that the best gauge of this for us is look at history, look at what has transpired in the past, and look at where we're at now. And I think that'll give you a better gauge as to what's going to happen in the future without having to go into the deep meditation and then transferring your consciousness into the future to scan those timelines, because not all of us know how to do that. So if we look at the past, comparing it to the present, we understand that we lost the battle, that the great civilizations that our ancestors built, and that the very foundations of which are still in existence today, and you can see evidence of that in almost every nation or continent on this face of this planet. You go and you'll see pyramids. And although the ruling elite has tried to cover all that up, it still comes to the surface and we become more aware of it. And I wrote a book, I'm sorry, ebook a number of years ago, in which I talked about that we should not be focusing on Atlantis as this very advanced civilization, because during that period in time, there were many advanced civilizations, Atlantis being one of them. And now modern archaeology and science has proven me to be right, because they are finding now evidence of more civilizations that had incredible technology. But as I said before, we lost the battle because the ruling elite were able to imprison the planet, take control of the planet. And one of the ways they did this was with modern religions. See, they have a very high and sophisticated understanding of occult powers. And although they poo-poo that here and they say, oh, no, don't, that's of the devil, or it's all superstition, or it doesn't work, they, behind the scenes, practice it heavily and pass it on to their families. And the one thing that you must know is that the ruling elite are genetically engineered. So what do I mean by that? They don't feel sympathy. They can't empathize with anyone. They have no emotions. Thus, they can commit mass murder and not feel anything. For you and I, we are divine creatures created in the likeness of God. So when we take a life, we feel something. When we see a life being taken, we weep. We identify with that individual. The ruling elite cannot do that because they're been genetically engineered. Obama is one of them, and he doesn't have the capacity to empathize with anybody. He doesn't have emotions. He can pretend and mimic them, but he really doesn't have it. And if you search online and Google online, you will see footage that has never been aired or broadcast where he's actually trying to imitate human emotions. So there's no argument that can be made to them to dissuade them from their plan. There's no amount of discussion, talking, praying, begging that will get them to stop. In fact, they feed off the fear. They feed off the anger and the terror and the fighting. It emboldens them. It strengthens them. This is what you're dealing with. So, in spite of what many people will talk about in the conspiracy theory arena about how we're headed toward this dystopian future where it's going to be dark and people are going to be enslaved, you must understand that it has already transpired. It is here now. We are living in a dark future. You know why? Because as I did in my previous video, and if you haven't seen it, go back where it talks about the woman being stripped naked. I kind of allude to the fact that You are a naked person. You have been stripped of all of your powers, your natural abilities, your ability to manifest different realities, your ability to travel in time, your ability to travel to different and distant galaxies. All that has been, that knowledge has been taken away from you. And not only just taken away from you, you are so under mind control. You have been so brainwashed that you don't even believe such things are possible. You laugh at the notion. Because if you weren't brainwashed, I would see you right now meditating, communicating with your alternate self in different parallel realities. These are natural things that you should be doing, but we don't do these things because we were stripped of our abilities. And they're very clever in the ways that they do it. They calcify the pineal gland so your third eye isn't awakened, so you don't get extra sensory perception. You don't have the ability to sense spirits that walk next to you, that touch you. You can't perceive them because your third eye has been damaged. They send out frequency, sound waves to keep you stuck in left brain thinking. So you never make use of your right brain, and the right brain is the gateway to time travel, to astral projection, to remote healing and remote viewing. But you can't do those things because you're polarized in the left brain. All great cultures and civilization of yesteryear were integrated brain thinkers. They used both hemispheres of the brain, but you are using the left brain, you're overtaxing it because it wasn't meant to be used in this manner and this much. One of the things the ruling elite has in mind for us is to do away with gender, with the gender roles. Because you see they're sexually perverted, they're sick, and they have not fully captured the planet. They know that. So they have to move to the next level of their plan. And one thing that I tell individuals out there, this is not a color thing, although there's a lot of discussion around that. You see, the ruling elite don't care about color. They make you think that it's important because you're a peon. You're a pawn in their chess game. So they feed you a lie, an ideology that's false to get you focused on something to distract you while they enact their master plan. And that focus is on race, on color, divide and conquer. And also with gender. You see, they know that to get the masses of the people on board with something cannot be done through a military imposition or enforcing a police state upon the people. That's really not the way you can control the billions of people on this planet. So they pump out an ideology that you will slowly accept and go along with. David Icke calls it the totalitarian tiptoe. They feed it to you in pieces because if they were to lay out the plan in its full glory, you would obviously reject it. You would be alarmed. So they have to feed it to you in increments, and that's how brainwashing is done. And then before you know it, you're going along with your own enslavement. You're begging for your own enslavement. And this is what we have now. How do you destroy a race? You destroy a race by having agents. Agents, well, we could say agent provocateurs, but they're not really provocateurs. I've been called that a lot. They're really stealth agents. They are individuals who've accepted the ideology. They have drank the Kool-Aid And now they're proselytizing, they're promoting the ruling elite's plan, not realizing that it means death for them. This is how twisted their minds are and how lost they are. And in some cases, some of these individuals are actually agents and they are doing this willingly. They know what they're doing and they're paid to do it. Such in the case in social media. When you go into certain groups in social media, you will have the one individual who organizes the group and the others that follow. And the ruling elite always runs test pilots, beta testing to see if it will work. And they do this beta testing on minority groups, Asians, Latin Americans, African Americans, because they are the most impoverished. They don't have the means and measures to protect themselves because all they can think about is surviving for the next day. They're living below the poverty line. They have no rights in this country. So they're ripe for the picking. So the ruling elite will first introduce their plan to these minority groups and get them to accept it. And then once it proves effective, then they move on to the larger population, which is the white population. Now they're the one of the clever things that they have done that's really clever is that they've taken a multifaceted approach. They know that one avenue of opportunity is not going to do the damage they're looking for. You understand? They knew when they created, and they do this all the time, they create special interest groups. They knew when they created feminism that it was not enough to destroy white males, which was their plan. So they had to enact other things like Me Too movement, create other organizations like the LGBTQ or the alphabet organizations. And the one thing that you have to understand about this, there's nothing wrong with fighting for your rights and organizing. But these individuals who fund you and who seem to be behind you don't give a damn about you. Some of my best friends, well, I shouldn't say best friends, some of my close friends were members of the gay and lesbian community. And they came to realize very quickly because they were African Americans that those organizations that were supposedly set up to give them medical assistance and support didn't give a damn about them. And I told them, I said, well, you have to understand that there is a sinister hand behind a lot of things that we do. And they don't care about you regardless. They're not looking at color. They're not look. See, this the mistake that the majority of white people made and are still making is that they understand that there is a phantom menace. They understand that clearly. They can pretend and act like they don't understand, but they know. But see, they think that it's not going to affect them because they have white privilege. That the the enforcement, the police state can only happen in minority communities. And oh, they are sadly wrong. Because as I said before, these are beta tests, these are test pilots so that they can move to the next level, which is to destroy white men. And they're slowly but surely doing it. But now white men are waking up to the fact of what's going on. And so clever are these individuals that even when white males wake up to the fact that they're targeted, the ruling elite's plan is so well thought out that white males direct their anger at the wrong people. So they'll vent their anger and frustration at black people. not realizing, hey, you're kicking somebody who's already down. Look up, look at the puppet master. That's who you need to be angry at. In the same way, the ruling elite gets white women to oppose white men, to become angry, because white men represent the patriarchy, the oppression of white women. So you must hate them, and you must form organizations in sisterhood to stand up for your rights. Form groups like Me Too and go after toxic masculinity. All of these terms, these ideas, these movements were created by major think tank institutions who sat down and mapped out the plan 100 years in advance of where they wanted the planet to be in 100 years. And one of the things they said is we want a planet that does not have a population of genders. But how can you do this? How can you enact this plan? Well, as we said before, there is the totalitarian tiptoe. But who stands in the way of this plan becoming fully materialized? And that is white males. So, in order to get rid of that opposition, they then craft and create the archetype of the white female, angry white female, the feminist, who is sick of her oppression and under the patriarchy. And now what you have is a gender war. But this is all orchestrated and tested in the African American community. Give black women more power than black men, make them the matriarchs of the black community. Tell them that their men are worthless, that the men are the source of their problems. And we drank the Kool-Aid. And now in both camps, what you'll see is a gender war. I've told people many times, especially those individuals who kind of knew the plan, that your enemy is not these organizations. These organizations are just fronts. The real culprits are hiding and you don't see them. And many individuals like, oh yeah, I know it's George Soros. He's financing these individuals. I said, no, no, it's not George Soros. He may be the one where the money is coming and flowing through, but he is not the power behind all of this. There's a greater power that you need to be aware of. And we're not. So what you have, especially in the African American community, those males who will put out propaganda to indoctrinate other males into this anti-life philosophy, this philosophy that will destroy them. And what I'm seeing that's being pumped out by these males is some of the most sick propaganda I've ever witnessed, far worse than what Hitler had did. And his propaganda was pretty good and evil. But these individuals are so lost and so mentally ill that they readily put out this propaganda, which will only turn around and bite them in the ass. And let me give you a sampling of some of these things. And I need you to follow along and don't get emotional, because that's what's going to cause you not to see straight. And don't get caught up in race either, because that's a deflection. Now, one of the first things that I saw, and you've probably or have been witness to this as well and haven't really thought much about it. Let me see what's going on here. Let's take a quick look at this. I came across this in my Facebook thread, and I'll read it to you. And this looks like an albino woman. And what it says here, it says, only the Black African woman has all the genetic DNA variations to produce every skin tones, different eye colors, and different hair texture. No other race can do that except duplicate their own kind. Every scientist has admitted that all of us come from Africa. So when we people realize that the Black woman is the mother of the entire human race. Okay, so first off, that's inaccurate and not based on any science. And I've just finished writing an article, which I'll publish next week, which refutes all of that. This is the kind of stuff that's being put out there. And the reason that it's being put out there is to elevate the woman. It's all about elevating the woman and making the man look inferior, useless, like a tool. Let us go on to see another example. All right, because that's really nothing. That's small potatoes. All right, it gets worse. Um, let's let's look at it from a very spiritual perspective. Let's get rid of this first of all. Advertisements. Let's read what this has to say. Remember, let's not get emotional over this. We have to take a step back and become Osir, impartial. All right. I mean, the title on this itself disturbs me. The Black woman is the supreme being of the universe and mother of humanity. The connotation or the idea of saying the supreme being connotes God. And you have here a lovely picture. All right, and we go down. Black melanated people with knowledge of self maintain a circumstances as gods. The Black woman is the mother of all gods, making her particular circumstance supreme. Oh, they have to put a disclaimer here. Acknowledging the divine circumstances of Black women is not a debasement of masculinity or men in general. When we get down to the metaphysical roots, we are simply talking about feminine and masculine energy anyway. The universe is essentially a cosmic reflection of a Black woman. All right, I can't go anymore. All right, I can't go anymore. I'm sorry. It's just too much. It's just too much. And the article goes on with more propaganda and a video. There was a woman, I forgot her name. She came out recently, and she actually talked about this video. Is about almost 2 hours, where you could the individual talks. I'm not going to say his name. He talks about why this whole thing about first it was the Black woman is a queen. Then it comes to the Black woman is God, not goddess, but God. Note the difference. And now it's gone from that to supreme God. Do you see what's going on here? Do you see the totalitarian tiptoe? This is an insult, and it is a slap in the face to God, and a slap in the face to our culture. You see, in ancient Kemet, there was always a celebration of two deities, the male and the female. Always. That was the basis of a cosmology. Where you had Ma'at, you had Tahuti, her mate. Where you had Osir, you had Osset or Isis. Neither one was elevated above the other. And now you see this propaganda being put out by African American males. Supreme being. Let us understand this as Cometians. And let me make this clear. so that you understand this. Your natural and true essence of who you are is consciousness. You have no race, you have no gender, you are immaterial, you are metaphysical. You cannot you cannot smell, hear, feel, or taste the essence of who you are. You are no one thing, hence you are all things. You do not exist in one fixed place in space and time. Let me say it again. You do not exist in one fixed place in space and time. You exist all places. You are a multi-dimensional being. As I sit here, I sit in an infinite number of universes, in an infinite number of parallel worlds and timelines. The ancient Kemetic people were very clear when they put their religion together. I don't understand if you have Ra and his daughter is Ma'at, one of the greatest goddesses of history, Ma'at. No one who understands the Kemetic religion, truly understands the Kemetic religion, will argue with the fact that Ma'at is one of the greatest goddesses. She is not the supreme goddess, but she is one of the greatest goddesses. And before her, well, you have her father, Ra. And before Ra, who do you have? You have Shu and Tefnut, male, female principles, sky, earth goddess. Let me see if I can pull up Shu and Tefnut so you guys can see, because that's important. And they serve the basis for the Chinese understanding of the 5 elements. And in the Ened, or as we call it, the company of gods, you have the creation story. Let's see if we get a better picture of Shu and Tefnut here. And Geb too. Geb is the earth. All right, let me show you this. This is probably the best images I can get so far of Shu and Tefnut. Let's see what we got here. All right. Shu and Tefnut. Tefnut, woman with the head of the lioness. Tefnut was the goddess of moisture. Now, we talked about this before in the previous video of not only when we would look at the gods or things, the Egyptians were fond of puns. So you would say that the goddess or god was analogous to this or analogous to that. The same way as Ma'at is a cold energy. You understand? She also refers to balance, reciprocity. So here's the papyrus showing Shu and Tefnut. The point I'm trying to make here is that you are seeing that the ancient Egyptians were very big on balance. This whole nonsense of a supreme woman is insane. It's insane. It's anti-life. You see, these individuals, whether they be real agents paid by the ruling elite or individuals who drank the Kool-Aid, what they are doing is the exact same thing that the Roman Emperor Constantine did in 325 AD. Let me explain. He took the Bible and he took Mary from her proper place and elevated Jesus. The female principle was looked at as analogous to the moon, the male principle as to the sun. So they needed to uphold the male principle more than the female principle. Now, there were many different cults in ancient Kemet that were practiced and worshipped. But the one thing that we didn't know is about balance. We would have never have taken one energy or intelligence and elevated above the other. Because the nature of cosmology tells you that everything in its place and a place for everything, that everything serves a function, a form, and a function. It's not just arbitrarily, oh, we're going to elevate this or above this, but that is what Constantine did. Now, remember I talked about puns and analogous or analogies, and which is what the Bible is about. The Bible is about astrotheology, but the Bible is replete with symbolism, which is why Christians are lost because they're reading it as a history book instead of a book with different layers of meanings, story within a story, symbolism within symbolisms. That's how our ancestors, that's the original occult writings. If you were an occultist, you would write in metaphors, because not that you were hiding the information from other people, it's because those metaphorical stories spoke to the right hemisphere of the brain. And that in understanding one thing, you would understand many things, which would then lead to what we call as the unified field theory, meaning the explanation of how everything works. But these individuals come along now and they are serving their taskmasters, the ruling elite. And they are picking on individuals who cannot defend themselves. When you look at the fact that there are more Black males incarcerated in the prison system than there are women on the planet, why is that not one of the issues to be debated for the next president? Why is that not a topic of discussion on every news program? When you look at the fact that a lot of Black women abort Black babies, which speaks to something going on inside of their heads as to not valuing who they are and their offspring. Why is that not front and center? Why are we not talking about that? When you talk about someone being a supreme being, you better have your ducks in a row, because the majority of us have made mistakes, are doing things we shouldn't be doing, have negative habits. And for you to come along and elevate those individuals to a supreme being, are you crazy? Really? Anyway, so what I want you to understand is the master plan here. See, this is only one stage. The next stage is going to move over to, same thing is going to be happening to white males. You're going to see the same type of propaganda being put out by white females and white males who have drank the Kool-Aid to lower the importance of white males. Now, again, this is not a gender issue. And that's what makes it so complicated, because on the surface, it seems like, well, Kasank, what do you have against Black women? Well, Kasank, why are you so in favor of white male rights? Because as Osir, or aspiring to be Osir, I'm not taking sides. I'm looking at this from a bigger perspective, a bigger picture, and I'm looking at for the welfare of all humanity. And I'm just trying to tell you what the plan is. Now let's get to the darker side. They're not concerned about indoctrinating the mass of the population into this ideology. They only need to get to a certain level, which is a tipping point. Now, it is very evident that Black women face real issues that are going on with them, economically and psychologically. There's some problems. But I want you to think about something. I'm going to put this forward to you. Okay, I'm going to put this forward for you to consider. Across the country, there have been a number of disappearances, Black women going missing. Yet no one's raising the red flag. No one's saying anything about those. I did a video talking about ergobores and pendulums and how do you control a population remotely. And when you take a certain group and you put them under duress and stress and you feed to them ideas, that information gets uploaded to the collective consciousness. And then others far away can download that information and start exhibiting those same traits. So those women that are being missing or are missing, let me use proper English, um, there's something going on to where I'm pretty sure it's part of occult rituals. I'm pretty sure it's a way of conditioning the minds of them so they can go along with this plan and go along with the attacks against Black males. And the exact same thing, the exact same model we can see happening to white women, missing white women, which they'll tell you, oh, they're probably caught up in sex trafficking. No, they're not. That's not what's happening. They're being taken, used as part of these occult rituals to penetrate their psyche and to get them to act in certain ways and to oppose white males for no legitimate reason. Hence is why you have the Me Too movement. Trust and believe the woman, no matter what she says, you don't need evidence. That's not right. So this is how, and it also goes along with what we were talking about before, which is the Willie Lynch letter, which really gets to the heart of this because he spelled it all out in terms of how you condition the minds of the population, how you control the population. Because it's no way for them to control billions of people on this planet without using occult forces. Do you understand what I mean? They have to do that. They don't possess any technology that can do that. But they know if they can take a number or a small group, put them under duress, and feed them programming like a maturing candidate, that information, that vibrational frequency will spread to others, and the others will enact the plan. This is what goes on behind the curtain. This is what is happening. And unfortunately, a lot of us will look at something like this and think nothing of it. Oh, hey, what's wrong with elevating the white woman? What's wrong with talking about, how, she's been oppressed over years and all that? Well, I'm all for exposing oppression, inequality, but that's not what this is about. There's something more sinister there. And too many people are selfish. I argued with one woman. She's a filmmaker. Well, I didn't argue with her. She found herself wanting to attack me. And I told her, I said, I have no disagreement with, I don't care how you want to live your life, but I'm letting you know that you're being manipulated, that they don't care about you, that you mean nothing to them. You think you are gaining something or you think you are fighting for your rights, but you are not. You are not. They are dictating the agenda. Every president that goes up for, or every would-be president, when they do their town halls or they go into the debates, those questions are filtered from the public, meaning that you and I cannot ask real questions and pose that to them. Because that means that they would have to answer those questions. And there are some questions they're not prepared to get into. Ask the candidate, would you care to talk about the Illuminati? Can you talk about that? And watch the firestorm you will have created. This is why they have to field those questions. They don't want to address those issues. Can you tell us why there's a large population of Black women that are just disappearing? What's going on with that? Oh, we don't want to address that. See, we can only address things that we've been paid to address by the political action committees or by big corporations that pay us to either shut up or to advocate for things that they want. This is why you should not be engaged in the Hegelian dialectic, which means that two choices for president are no choice at all. Dumb and dumber, evil and eviler. That's a word. So I want you to think about where we're headed and what's going on. Think about your role in this. Think about, are you caught up in the rhetoric? Meaning, are you focusing on race and gender and not really looking at what's going on beneath the surface? That is the one good thing I really learned from the high priest, because he had a knack for getting to the heart of the issue. He would always tell me, no, don't get into that. That's a deflection. Always deal with the source and expose that. But when you are an infant and you're not fully developed, or I should say awakened, then you focus on trivial things. My rights above your rights. I only care that I get my rights. I don't care about you. You are opposing my right to live. You don't like me because I'm transgender. You don't like me because I'm Black. No, that's not it. That's not it. This is why when we have these discussions in this forum, I say, get to the heart of it. You are consciousness. You are God. And then everything else should flow from that. Everything else should flow from that. And when you understand that fundamental principle, then everything else comes into perspective. If I'm God, that means I control time and space. If I'm God, that means that I created the reality I see before me. If I'm God, that means that this is a subjective experience that I'm having. It is not an objective experience. If I am God, I exist in all places at once. If I'm God, I should be working to awaken my powers. And keep in mind, there are some in the African American community that will try to convince you that the ruling elite, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it, the cabal, are out to wipe out the African American population. That is partly true. Yes, this is why you're seeing TV commercials that have interracial couples where you have the white man, the Black woman. They want to, kind of like, what's that word? It's not liquidate, but it's like dilute the race. Yes, but don't get it twisted. It's not about race with them. It's about control. It's about power. It's about Satanism. They want you gone, irrespective of what you're black, white, Chinese, Asian. They don't care. They want you gone. And if getting you to focus on race and gender will facilitate that, then so be it. They will do it. And so far, it's working because that's what we're all caught up in. Ego centered. The ego stands in the way of connecting with source energy. Ego is feeding the ego. So you have this propaganda that comes out there and that pumps up the head of white women. Oh, you're Captain Marvel. You're an empowered white woman. You can do all of these things. You're all that in a bag of chips. Feeds the ego. Puts out propaganda. Oh, you are a supreme being. You're the most educated woman on the planet. All that is nonsense. It's nonsense. Jovan Hudson, thank you for the donation. Tepu, much appreciated. So my goal is not to offend anybody, but it's to just put things in perspective and have you understand that we're not fighting against these trivial matters of race and gender. Now, don't take it out of context. I'm not saying that that's not important. Who you are as a person, your legacy, your ancestors, your race, yes, those things are important. And you should celebrate who you are. But don't use that as a means to create obstacles from you connecting with other beings on this planet. You see, the masses of white people on this planet, and I'm talking to you, whether you want to admit it or not, you're brainwashed into believing you are superior to all others, people of color. Yes, you are brainwashed. Don't tell me you're not. Because there's no way you can't be living in this society which continually pumps out propaganda to make you feel good, to boast your ego. I'm Bond, James Bond. I get to sleep with any woman I want. Doesn't matter what color she is. I'm Captain Kirk. I sleep with yellow, green, pink women. It feeds the ego. And if you don't think so, well, start looking at what's going on beneath the surface in your subconscious mind, because that's where it's at. That's where it's cemented within the subconscious mind. And the only way that you're going to be able to purge yourself of that is by connecting with other beings on this planet and seeing them as your brothers and your sisters, and that galvanizing our forces to face the real enemy, not each other, but the real enemy. We have to awaken to an understanding that there's a force on this planet that is in control and that it doesn't mean us well. But they're masters of manipulation and masters of deflection. They're showing you one hand, but they don't want you to look at the other hand of what's going on. Just focus on this hand. Don't worry about what this hand is doing. Just like I tell you, NASA talks about these great probes that are going to Mars and taking dirt and samples. Those are just propaganda smoke screens. They're really setting up a base on Mars, but they have to put some type of news story out there, because it's very difficult to hide the fact that you're launching all of these rockets and stuff to Mars. So the propaganda is, oh, we're just going out there to take soil samples. Oh, we're just going out there to see if there's water. How many probes have you sent there? You still want to know if there's water? You still want to know what's in the sand, in the rocks? You know what's in the sand and the rocks? More sand than rocks. They have done a magnificent job in getting us to focus on race focus on gender, focus on materialism, focus on ego. They have won. We are doing it. We're playing along according to their plan. But it's time that we put the brakes on and start looking and saying, are we being manipulated? Who's the real enemy? So, hey, Mike, let me just talk, let me address that. That's a good point you brought up. A dark future. It's where the energy is going to at this particular moment, and it could change. It could change. You know what I'm saying? So it all depends on our thoughts and our energy vibration. If the masses of us have a sincere change and our frequency and our vibration changes, we will go to a better future. But if we focus on the superficial, then we're playing along with them. You see, they have scanned the future timelines and they have found one timeline that they like. And that's the timeline where they're in control and they're ruling. And they have found that through that timeline, in other words, they have examined how did they get to that point in the future. And they saw that their parallel selves did X, Y, and Z. So after scanning that and figuring that out, they have come back to this present moment. And now they're saying to get us to that dark dystopian future, we have to implement X, Y, and Z. Let's do it. But in the same note, we can do the same thing. We can project forward, scan the timeline, and see where there is love and where there's light, and say that is the future that we want to get to. How did our alternate selves get there? We examine that they did BYZ or whatever, and we come back and say, okay, as a collective, we need to do BYZ to take us to that future of love and light. That's what we have to start doing. We're just at this present moment, we're just letting things unfold the way, whatever, let it unfold. Yeah, whatever. You can't do that. You can't do that. And I've said this, and it takes time for these individuals to catch up because they don't practice real magic or understand the occult. I've said this. The ruling elite controls time and space. They have mastered that. They can control time and space because they realize the secret that they're gods. They know they're gods. You don't know you're God. That's the problem. You don't know that you can control time and space because you have these fools out here, call them, Christians running around talking about, oh, the only way to save your souls through Jesus Christ. No, 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 no. Don't buy that. Don't buy that. Don't drink that Kool-Aid. You are Christ. You are the Christ consciousness. You are Jesus Christ. Then Jesus says, what I can do, what I do, you can do even more. Didn't he say that? So if you learn to use your power and you awaken your power, then they become powerless. And that's what they're afraid of, you awakening. Now I've showed you the propaganda. So how do you fight that? You don't fight that by writing an article that kind of like dispels all of that nonsense. You can do it, but how do you really address that? Is changing your vibration. Because remember what I said, you affect others far and near, or near and far. When you change, your reality changes. It has no choice but to change. This is why they are kidnapping certain groups to get them to think a certain way and to create the reality that they want. But you can flip the script on them and change all of that. Their greatest fear is not you becoming woke or coming to an understanding that they exist. Is you practicing and utilizing your God power. Then they get discombobulated, they get upset, they get worried, and they don't know how to deal with us in that sense because they know we're powerful, because we outnumber them. They're only a small group. And we're more in numbers, but we're not unified in thought. They have introduced all of these sayings and these groupings and these associations which separate us, keep us from aligning with each other, keep us fighting with each other for rights and resources. If I'm God, I can manifest abundance. I can manifest the resources I need. I don't need to be crying that, oh, well, my group, we don't have privileges, we don't have rights. Well, they're saying that, declaring that is not going to suddenly make the evildoers give you rights. They're not. So it does you no good to bring this to the table, to mention this. The way you're going to have to deal with it is to work it through magic. I've always said this, and I'm going to leave you guys with this. If you don't like the reality that you created, just quantum leap to a new reality. Just say, hey, I'm done with this. This is too screwed up. Let me go to a new reality. I don't like this one. Just quantum leap or quantum shift to that new reality. How do you do that? Change your belief system. Change your thought process. The mere fact that you start to accept the fact that you're God, you've already shifted into a parallel world. You're in a new world now. You don't even realize it. You think it's the same, but it's not. It's a different universe. And then if you start to practice your meditations and practice astral projecting, and then you'll shift to another world. You won't realize it, but you are. Those incremental steps shift you away. How can I demonstrate this the best way if possible? The ruling elite, you are here. You meditate more, you shift to a parallel world. You do astral projection, you shift to a parallel world. You manifest different realities, you shift to a parallel world until you shift so far from them that one day you'll wake up and they no longer exist. That's how it works. Now, you could start here and shift to a new reality in one quantum leap, but you're not that powerful enough to do that. So it's going to have to be done in increments. That's okay because that's how they're doing it. That's how they're getting you to accept their belief system and shift you to the world that they want you to be in. See, they're pushing you toward their reality, their space-time continuum. You've got to push back by using your magic. There's no other way. And if you sit there and just take this lackadaisical approach, then that's going along with the plan. You become a willing participant in their new world order. But you say, but Kasak, I'm not doing anything. It's your responsibility as God man, God woman to do something. You can't just sit there and do nothing. That means you endorse this way of life. You endorse what they're doing. Well, I get tired when I come home. I don't want to meditate. Then don't complain when the darkness hits you. Don't complain. Because you had an opportunity and you had the power to make a change, but you didn't. You made excuses. So I want to thank you all, and I hope this message really, really resonated with you. And like I said, if you get an opportunity, please donate to the channel. And do not forget, if you're looking to make that quantum leap, check out my program, Reality Manifestation. It's a really good program. And basically, we go through the details of manifesting a new reality and shifting you to parallel worlds. So think about enrolling in that. And until my next broadcast, this is Kasak Ma Keparu, son of Maat and Tahuti. Maat is the beautiful goddess Heteru. Till my next broadcast, Amun Ra.